Hello, Fear Minimalist. So glad to see you today. I am Sophia Lark of thefearminimalist.com, helping women of color heal the fear-based emotional cycle that keeps them stuck in mother wound trauma. So one of the biggest keys to healing mother wound trauma is to reduce the emotional numbness and or emotional hyperactivation of the autonomic nervous system so that you can develop the capacity to consistently regulate your emotions. So I'm going to show you a resource that can help you do that, so make sure you keep watching. If you're joining me for the first time today, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to be here with us. And if this content resonates with you, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so that you'll get all of the latest updates when I release new content every single week. So to be able to feel the emotions that you were not allowed to feel, or that you maybe you've started to develop some type of approach to letting yourself feel some of these emotions, you need a consistent, a reliable feeling resource that you can lean on to be able to make important life decisions, to deal with potential threats or perceived threats, and to manage your interactions with other people. And so the first thing you have to do is to develop the skill of noticing and naming, or some people may call it identifying and labeling, but it's pretty much the same thing. Being able to consistently, through a repetitive process of noticing and naming what you're feeling and monitoring your responses to those feelings, develops what you call the ability of interoception. Interoception is being able to detect your body signals and what they're telling you. So you develop this autonomic and emotional awareness of what's going on inside your body and your tendency to respond to what's going on inside. And when you master this ability of interoceptive awareness, then you are able to increase your emotional capacity to self-regulate. So that means that you can identify and you can label and you can regulate and express yourself in healthy ways in response to triggers. And when this happens, you increase your positive life experiences. You make better decisions because you have a more consistent access to those prefrontal functions where problem solving is done, where creativity lives. And it only comes when you're able to have a relaxed body. When you're relaxed in your body, you're relaxed in your ability to not be so on high alert. Then you're able to start making those better life choices. Let's walk through a scenario to provide a visual of this noticing and naming process so that you can get a clear understanding of, how do I actually do this? You know, it's one thing to say you need to notice and name your feelings and monitor them, but how exactly do you do it? And so in therapy, therapists do this in a number of ways. We have feelings tracking forms. We have a cognitive one, we have a somatic one, we have the emotional one. And basically you track how from trigger all the way to the response. So from stimulus to response, what is happening in between that is not allowing you to get to the behavioral response that you desire or that's more desirable. Let's say you and your mom got into almost a fist fight 2 holidays ago at a Christmas party. You had this very disturbing argument. It ended very horribly. And as a result of that, you ended up putting some physical distance between you all, in addition to not speaking to her. And so it's been 2 years. Over the course of 2 years, you feel like, okay, I'm over this, whatever, I'm moving on with my life. And so you're going on about your life when you get this one phone call from your sister, who begins, sort of not in a panic, but she just goes, you really need to call mom. She's really concerned that, something's wrong. She needs you to call her. She said it's been 2 years since you've talked to her. She's been calling you for the last year and a half, and you haven't returned any of her phone calls. And she just doesn't understand how you can let something like this just ruin the relationship between you and her. And so, you say what you say, you get off the phone, and suddenly you're triggered into this torrent of emotions, and you don't know what to do about it. So what is the naming and noticing? What is the noticing and naming process that we're doing here? So how do we walk through this? First of all, we need to name what it is that happened. We've been triggered. We've had a trigger. That's something that you can give a name to, right? I've been triggered. Triggered how? What is the trigger? The trigger is the phone call from the sister. And typically when you have a trigger, you have a feeling that comes in right along with it. And so the next thing is going to be, when she called me, how did I feel about this? What kind of feelings arose in me? We have the tendency, because, the brain only has the capacity to hold so much information, and what we're not using, it filters out. And so typically when you ask a person how they're feeling, you're going to hear the normal responses. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm disappointed, I'm depressed, I'm frustrated, those kinds of things. And there's not a huge vocabulary around what you're feeling. And so the goal here, when we're becoming masters of noticing and naming what we're feeling, especially people who grew up in households where there was repeated trauma. We've grown up with these ingrained messages, these ingrained ways of responding. And so you haven't had a lot of practice of noticing and naming in a way that was safe. I said all that to say that I've included a list from the Hoffman Institute. It's a feelings list, a really elaborate list that will help you increase your vocabulary around naming what you feel. And it also has naming what you feel, not just how I feel emotionally, but how I feel in my body. And so you can expand on that vocabulary. Instead of happy, sad, the typical things, you can delve into, I feel trapped, I feel depleted, I feel grouchy, outraged, frazzled, pissed. My body feels knotted. It feels tight and stiff, immobilized. I feel unsafe. Those kinds of things, where you start developing this expansive vocabulary around how you feel, what happens is you begin to have more nuanced interpretations of what you're feeling. And when you do that, you become more proficient at responding, at identifying what you're feeling in your body. You have more interoceptive awareness. That's what the vocabulary helps you do. So click the link in the description below where you can get access to that list. Now, after you have identified the trigger and the feeling, then you also need to identify what I call scale of feeling. This is just a measurement of how intense you feel the feeling in your body. So how strongly do you feel this of being frazzled? How strongly do you feel being depleted or disrespected, or how strongly do you feel that? It's usually on a scale of 1 to 10 where you can measure. I feel this so strongly that I can't even think straight. I can't concentrate. All I can think about is how disrespected I feel and how she doesn't care about my feelings. Now, we'll get right into the thoughts and the beliefs here in a second. But how strongly do you feel this? Is it so strong that you can't focus or concentrate? You're so overwhelmed that you basically shut down? Or is it sort of mild to moderate? Yeah, I feel it. It bothers me, but you know what? I don't really have a response to that. I think the best way to respond to this is not to say anything until I'm ready, and just keep boundaries in place. So that's going to be a different rating, right? That's not going to be a 10. That's probably going to be more of a, maybe 3 or 4, possibly a 5. So right in the middle. It bothers me, but I know my mom. And so that's how you measure how strongly you're feeling in your body. And then you want to move to what I call lot measurement, or length of the trigger. How long does it last? So we talked about scale of feeling. How strong do you feel in your body? The next thing we want to talk about is the length of the trigger. How long does it last? Does it last, a couple of minutes, a few hours, a few days, or maybe even a couple of weeks? That's a really strong trigger if it lasts a few days or a couple of weeks. That means something is really unresolved, and it's probably going to be best to keep that physical distance until you're able to work on whatever whatever the strong reaction is. So how long does it last? Because if you're able to bounce back relatively quickly after kind of being disturbed like that, that either you have shut off or disconnected, or you have dealt with it in such a way where you're desensitized to it. It just doesn't bother you anymore. Once you determine the length of the trigger, then you're going to move on to the thoughts and the beliefs and the internalized messages. So I started to allude to some of that earlier when I was talking about the feeling and the scale of feeling. When we feel a particular way as a result of being triggered, and it's usually a negative feeling, there's usually thoughts that come along with it as well. So you don't just stop at the trigger. We're going to talk here about the space in a minute of how to access healthier responding. But if you continue to let that trigger play out, what's going to happen is you're going to feel some kind of way. You're going to feel it intensely. It's going to last for a length of time. And then you're going to have these thoughts, and these internalized beliefs and messages are going to start coming to the surface. So it could raise thoughts about your worthiness or your unworthiness. I feel disrespected. I must not be worthy of respect. I must be a pushover. Or she must not really love me. She must not really care about the boundaries that I set. Obviously, she doesn't care about how I feel because she knew that I was going to get upset about this. Sending my sister to give me a message about why I'm not calling her. Those kinds of things. So think about what kind of thoughts start coming to mind as a result of being triggered as this trigger plays out. And then the behavioral response. How do you behave? How do you act? How do you behave in response to this chain that has been set off by your sister calling you? And so what happens, what happens here before we learn how to do things in a healthy way, we have a behavioral repertoire. And it could be anything from calling your mom and cussing her out. I hope you won't do that, but some people do. It could be further isolating yourself. It could be reaching for that bag of chips, sitting in front of the TV, eating the whole thing sort of mindlessly. It could be, going on a shopping spree, whether it's a, brick and mortar, or you hop on Amazon or whatever. Gambling. It could be substance use. It could be a number of ways that you respond depending on how intensely you feel the emotion. Putting all of that together, the trigger, the feeling, the scale of feeling, the length of the trigger, the thoughts, the beliefs, and the behavioral response as a part of this chain that was set off by that trigger. So let's talk about the space between trigger and response. So the space between the phone call and what you did in response to that phone call. Dr. Viktor Frankl, he's the founder of logotherapy, and he talks about this space between trigger and response being the opportunity for you to make a healthy choice so that you can have a different outcome. So the space between trigger and response in this situation would be the feeling, the scale of feeling, the length of the trigger, the thoughts, the internalized messages. That would be your space before you get to the behavior. So that's really where the work comes in, is when I'm triggered, I start feeling disrespected or frazzled or whatever the word might be. And then as I begin to feel that way, I can engage in techniques that can help me get to parasympathetic functioning, to relax my body so that I can access those prefrontal functions to make better choices. So how would I do that? How would I utilize this space between trigger and response? One thing I have people start off doing is a focused breathing technique. And focused breathing, my nose is a little stopped up today, but I'm going to be doing some breathing through my nose. So if you notice that, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Focused breathing can help to relax the body. It could be used as a meditational tool to focus on something very specific so that you can deal with that in the moment. And so basically it is a diaphragmic breathing technique combined with sort of a meditational aspect. And basically what you do is you just breathe normally. And then what happens is you begin to recognize how you're breathing. So if you put one hand on your chest here, I'm trying to do it higher, and one on the belly. When you're breathing from the diaphragm, only the hand on the belly should expand. So if you can imagine blowing air into a balloon really slowly through your nose. So let's try that. So through your nose, just take a couple of, just breathe in deeply. And so my chest moved. So that means I wasn't doing it correctly. So let's try that again. And only our tummy should come out. So breathe in deeply. There we go. And exhale. Now, you do that a couple of times. The meditational component comes in where you breathe in through your nose, breathe out, and as you're inhaling, you can start to count. So I want you to focus on something really specific, like counting. So as you inhale, that's 1, and exhale. And when you say exhale, you can just say relax. Okay, so let's try that. That's 1, relax. That's 2, I'm safe. That's 3, relax. And you can keep doing that. And before you know it, when you get to 10, you should feel differently. You should feel just a little bit right at calm, or just a little bit almost there. Or some people are like, oh, I'm really calm. I don't even know what I was mad about. So you can do things like that to help you take advantage of that space. Or you can get out a notebook and you can write down my 5 senses. And you can write down 5 things that I hear, 5 things that I see, 5 things that I can taste, 5 things that I can touch, 5 things that I can smell. And you go through each one and you see which one you can do. It might be, oh, I can eat a piece of candy. Or I can write a micro poem, a small little poem about how I'm able to manage this situation in this moment. You can do a number of things. You can do therapeutic journaling. So accessing that space, you can even call an accountability partner. You can call your coach. You can call your therapist if they're available. You can call somebody who is reliable, who is available. That's how you can access that space. Go for a walk. Drink a cup of cold water. Rub your hands together. Put them on your face. Rock back and forth. Wrap up in a blanket. Listen to an audio book. The options are endless. It's just being able to stop yourself so that you can access that space between trigger and behavior. And so then when you stop yourself after you feel a certain way and you're like, I think I need to take a walk right now. I think that's going to be good for me. And as I'm walking, I'm going to breathe out and say I'm safe. I'm going to breathe. Inhale, exhale, everything's okay. As I'm doing that, maybe I'm counting the pebbles on the ground, whatever I'm doing. And when I get to the end of that, I can take a measurement of my feeling. How strongly do I feel it now? How long did that last? What are the thoughts? What are the beliefs? What are the messages that I'm getting now? I'm worthy. I'm okay. I can still speak my truth. My truth is what matters in this moment, right? And so now the behavior is, I'm going to keep doing what I know I should do, which is to not give in to this pressure and to respond to her when I'm good and ready. So in the meantime, I'm going to connect with a couple of people. Maybe I have some coffee with my friend. Maybe I'll write in my journal. Maybe I'll just take a drive. See how different that turns out. But easy to say, a lot harder to do and to make habitual. So that's why consistent practice, I always tell people, you need to practice this every day. Set your timer for 5 to 10 minutes and practice naming and noticing what you're feeling, going through that feelings tracker. So what I was going to tell you is that I've included a feelings tracker. So all of those things that we just went through, you'll be able to practice those. And so you can print out this sheet as many times as you want. Because at the end of the day, or at the end of, mastering your ability to increase interoceptive awareness, you want to be able to have 100 of these sheets, really. You don't have to have that many to be able to master, but you can have 10 or 15 of them. And you're like, I think I got a pretty good handle on this. And so you want to be able to fill those out and say, I know what happened here, and I know how I typically responded. And so something similar like that happened again, and I remembered the sheet that I responded not too well. And so I'm going to track it again and see how I respond. And the more you deal with how you feel, if you're constantly getting angry about stuff, track anger. If you're constantly feeling depleted, track depletion, right? Track these things that you're constantly feeling. That's why you have to know how to name and label. Because if you know that you're feeling a certain kind of way, then you can track this on these sheets. And then you can start to see a pattern. And that's how you start to nip it. And when you're able to see that pattern and to address that right away, then that's how you start to change how you respond to what you're feeling in your body. And then you start to make better decisions about how you're feeling. So guys, download the resources that I talked about, that Hoffman Institute's feelings list, also my feelings tracker form, to help you walk through the naming and noticing process. And if you have any questions, just contact me at Fear Minimalist on Instagram. I'm also at Fear Minimalist on Twitter and Fear Minimalist on Facebook. So you guys can contact me in those ways if you have further questions. All right, guys, and so that's it. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button, share with your friends, drop a comment to let me know how this was helpful for you today. Guys, tell me in the comments, like, when I was walking through the trigger part, I realized, and whatever you realized, let me know what you realized and how helpful that was for you. It always informs how I continue to make these videos, and so I need your feedback, and I appreciate and I welcome your feedback. Last but not least, guys, be sure to subscribe, turn on your notifications so that you'll get all the latest updates when I release new content every single week. And remember that the sun is going to rise and shine bright tomorrow. The question is, are you going to rise with it and allow your best self to shine? I hope you do, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.